In a sterile conference room in Savannah, under the hum of fluorescent lights, I set a small, black device on the mahogany table. It was an old digital camcorder, the kind you saw everywhere in the early 2000s. The opposing counsel, a man who charged $600 an hour to intimidate people, stared at it like it was a relic. Across the table, my sister Morgan adjusted her designer blazer, her expression a mix of boredom and irritation. She was suing a stranger for defamation, and I was the witness she never expected to testify against her. I didn't say a word. I just connected the cable to the room's monitor and pressed play. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy video dated November 14th, 2006. On the screen, a 12-year-old girl was on the floor, clawing at her throat, her face turning blue as she gasped for air during a severe asthma attack. That girl was me. And holding the camera steady, laughing as she zoomed in on my terror, was 9-year-old Morgan. Her voice, high and cruel, cut through the silence of the conference room. "Look at her," she said on the tape. "Total drama queen. Die already." The lawyer froze. Morgan's face went white. The silence, in that room, was deafening. Before I tell you exactly what my mother screamed when she saw that footage, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. Objection, the lawyer stammered, though his voice lacked the shark-like confidence he had walked in with. "This is irrelevant. We are here to discuss a defamation claim regarding a blog post, not childhood home movies." He looked at Morgan, silently pleading with her to give him something, anything, to explain away the cruelty on the screen. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes locked on my sister. "It goes to character," I said, my voice steady. "You claim my client lied about your history of bullying. This video proves that cruelty isn't just a habit for you, Morgan. It is a sport." Morgan let out a breathy, incredulous laugh. It was a sound I knew well. The sound she made right before she tried to rewrite reality. "Oh my God. Madison," she said, rolling her eyes. "It was a skit. We were kids making a horror movie. You are seriously trying to use a 20-year-old acting exercise to ruin me. It is pathetic. Besides, that video could be anything. Deepfake. AI. You are an architect. You know how to manipulate images." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice to defend my 12-year-old self. I simply reached into my leather portfolio and pulled out a stack of papers, bound with a heavy clip. I slid them across the polished mahogany table until they rested directly in front of her legal team. "Digital tapes have timestamps," I said, "and so do text messages." The papers were transcripts of text logs from a Motorola Razr, recovered from the same box in the attic where I had found the camera. I had printed them in high contrast. "Read the highlighted section," I instructed. The lawyer looked down. I saw his throat tighten as he read the words Morgan had sent to her best friend 20 minutes after I had nearly suffocated. "OMG, almost deleted Madison today. She turned blue. So ugly. Mom didn't even notice. I think I am going to be an only child soon. Lol. Is that a skit?" "Morgan," I asked. "Is that AI?" Morgan didn't answer. She stared at the paper, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. The air in the room seemed to evaporate. For 19 years, she had relied on the fact that my memory was fallible, that it was my word against hers. She had gaslit me into believing I was too sensitive, that I misremembered, that I was crazy. But paper doesn't have feelings. Paper doesn't get confused. I looked past her to the corner of the room where my parents, Susan and Richard, were sitting. They had insisted on being here to support Morgan against these baseless attacks. Now, they weren't looking at me. They weren't looking at Morgan. They were staring intently at the pattern on the carpet. Their bodies rigid. They weren't shocked by the cruelty. They knew. They had always known. They were just shocked that I had the receipts. In that sterile room, the power dynamic that had defined my entire life shifted. The heavy weight of their judgment, which I had carried on my shoulders since I was a child, suddenly vanished. It wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. I wasn't just a witness. I was the one holding the pen. And for the first time, I was writing the story. "We are done here," I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. "I think you have enough for your discovery phase." I walked out of the conference room, leaving them in the silence I had created. But I knew it wasn't over. Morgan wasn't the type to fold. She was the type to escalate. And I was counting on it. To understand why I walked out of that conference room without a shred of guilt, you have to understand the house I grew up in. It was a sprawling Victorian mansion in the historic district of Savannah, the kind of place tourists stop to photograph. It had wraparound porches, manicured azaleas, and a silence so heavy it felt like it had its own gravity. To the outside world, Susan and Richard were the perfect Southern couple, gracious, wealthy, and devoted to their beautiful daughters. But inside those walls, I was living in a glass cage where the oxygen was slowly being siphoned out. That night in 2006 wasn't an anomaly. It was the climax of a lesson my parents had been teaching us for years. I remember the smell of the carpet as my face pressed against it, dust and lemon polish. My lungs felt like they were filled with concrete. I was wheezing. A terrible, rattling sound that seemed too loud for the polite quiet of our living room. Morgan was standing over me with the camera, giggling. But it was what happened behind her that actually broke me. My parents were on the cream-colored sofa, watching a sitcom. My father, Richard, had a glass of scotch in his hand. My mother, Susan, was flipping through a catalog when I started gasping, really struggling to pull air into my body. My father didn't jump up. He didn't drop his glass. He didn't rush to the phone to call 911. He sighed. It was a long, heavy sigh of irritation. The kind you make when a fly won't stop buzzing around your head. Then, he picked up the remote control. He pointed it at the television and pressed the volume button. Click, click, click. The laugh track of the sitcom got louder, drowning out the sound of my lungs failing. My mother glanced at him, then at me, and gave a small, tight nod of agreement. They didn't hate me. Hate requires passion. This was worse. This was indifference. You see, there's a trap called normalized cruelty, and my parents had built their entire lives inside it. To them, my asthma, my needs, my very existence were not crises to be managed. They were interruptions to be minimized. They had trained themselves and Morgan to view my pain as a performance. By turning up the volume, they were deciding that their comfort was more real than my medical emergency. They taught Morgan that night that empathy was optional, and that eliminating the noise of my existence was the ultimate goal. I dragged myself to the kitchen that night and found my backup inhaler in a drawer. I saved myself while the laugh track played in the other room. That was the night I realized I wasn't their daughter. I was a glitch in their perfect programming. And Morgan, she wasn't just a mean sister. She was their best student. She had learned that if she wanted to be the favorite, she just had to help them erase me. For the next 19 years. That is exactly what she did. She didn't just hold the camera. She took the director's chair. And I let her. Because I was too busy trying to breathe to realize I was being suffocated on purpose. They didn't just stop loving me after that night. They started editing me out. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow, methodical erasure. Like water eroding stone. Morgan wasn't just a cruel child anymore. She was a strategist. And her target was the inheritance. You see, Grandmother Eleanor wasn't like my parents. She was sharp, old money Savannah, and she controlled the family trust, a portfolio worth $2.5 million. She loved me. When I was small, we used to sit in her garden, and she would tell me that I had the eye of a builder. But slowly, mysteriously, she stopped calling. Her birthday cards stopped arriving. When I tried to visit her nursing home, the staff would tell me she was resting or not up for visitors. I thought she had forgotten me. I thought she had chosen Morgan. Just like everyone else. It wasn't until I found the email logs in the attic alongside that camcorder that I realized the scale of the operation. Morgan had been playing interceptor for 19 years. She deleted voicemails from my grandmother before I could hear them. She threw away my letters. And then she planted the lie that sealed my fate. I found an email from Morgan to my mother, dated 3 years ago. Grandma asked about Madison again. I told her Madison couldn't come because she's back in rehab. Meth again. So sad. Grandma cried. But she agreed, it's better not to give her money if she's just going to smoke it. Rehab. I have never touched a drug in my life. I graduated top of my class in architecture. I built my own firm in Atlanta from the ground up, designing sustainable housing while they were busy curating their image. But to my dying grandmother, I was a junkie who had abandoned her. Morgan hadn't just stolen my relationship, she had stolen my character to secure the bag. I didn't fight them then. I knew that screaming the truth would just make me look like the unstable addict they painted me to be. So I went silent. I moved 3 hours away. I let them think they had won. I let them believe I was the ghost they wanted me to be. But arrogance is a blinding light. Morgan got comfortable. She got so used to controlling the narrative that she thought she could bully anyone. Last month, she sued a local lifestyle blogger for defamation because the woman posted a negative review of Morgan's lifestyle brand. Morgan thought she could crush the woman in court. She didn't realize that by filing a lawsuit, she opened the door to discovery, the legal process where evidence is gathered. The blogger's lawyer subpoenaed family records to prove a pattern of bullying. And that subpoena landed on my desk. Morgan thought I was deleted. She forgot that files are never really gone, they are just archived. I went back to the Savannah house while they were on vacation. Used my old key to get into the carriage house attic. And I found the box they were too lazy to burn. The camcorder. The old phones. The printed emails. I realized then that I wasn't just a witness for the defense. I was the executioner. You might think that after being exposed in a deposition with video evidence of her own cruelty, my sister would retreat. You might think she would feel shame. But that assumes Morgan operates like a normal human being. She doesn't. She operates like a narcissist who just lost control of the script. And when that happens, they don't apologize. They rewrite the genre. 48 hours after the deposition, my phone started vibrating so hard, it nearly danced off my drafting table. Notifications were flooding in. Not texts, but tags. I opened Instagram and saw Morgan live on camera, soft ring light. Oversized gray sweatshirt. Deliberately messy hair. Tears ready. She told her followers she was being bullied by her jealous sister. Accused me of using AI deepfakes to blackmail her. And framed herself as the victim of my supposed failure. The comments flooded with sympathy and outrage. I watched calmly. It was a textbook Darvo move: deny. Attack. Reverse. Victim and offender. She couldn't deny the video anymore. So she called it fake and turned me into the villain. Her tears weren't pain. They were recruitment. My parents shared the stream. My mother publicly prayed for sweet Morgan. Confident I'd take the bait and self-destruct. I didn't respond. I called the digital forensics expert I'd hired weeks earlier. He sent me an audio file time-stamped 10 minutes before Morgan went live, a deleted rehearsal from her phone. In it, she and my mother discussed lighting, fake sickness, attacking my credibility, and timing the sobs. Then Morgan laughed, counting down to cue the waterworks. I uploaded the raw audio with one title, The Rehearsal. Within an hour, public sympathy collapsed. Sponsors dropped her in real time. By midnight, Morgan deleted her account, but the internet didn't forget. A week later, we met at the lawyer's office for grandmother Eleanor's will. Morgan received the $2.5 million estate. I received books and papers. They celebrated until the addendum. The inheritance was locked in a strict spendthrift trust. Morgan couldn't access the money, sell the property, or borrow against it. She'd receive only a basic monthly stipend. Every other expense required trustee approval. And the trustee was me. The room went silent. Morgan realized she was rich on paper but powerless. Any challenge to the trust would forfeit everything to charity. 6 months later, I managed the trust from my architecture firm. I deny designer handbags labeled mental health emergencies and approve grocery bills. My parents still live in the Savannah mansion. Now dependent on the allowance I approve. The parties are gone. The power is not. I finally understood my grandmother's brilliance. She didn't give me money, she gave me immunity. I built my life without their approval. And for the first time in 19 years, I can breathe. Have you ever won without throwing a punch? Tell me your story.